Greetings and salutations, shoppers. The Crystal Lake gift shop is now open. This is Mr. Venom welcoming you back to the Crystal Lake gift shop. Before we start talking about this week's episode, let me go ahead and introduce my cohorts. As always, my store manager is Mr. Mike Maryman. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, what's up? Ready to go a few rounds on today's episode?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm so ready. And then, as always, it is the lovely Lacy Lou. How you doing, Lacy?
I'm ready to TKO this shit.
Oh, man, we're all in a fighting mood. I love it. Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, this week's episode, Friday the 13th, the series, episode number 8, which is entitled Shadow Boxer. This episode first aired in November of 1987, November 21st to be exact, 1987. It currently has an IMDb rating of 6.6, coming in at 46 minutes in length, as most of these episodes, of course, will be around 45, 46 minutes. And our synopsis is as follows. Mickey and Ryan investigate the murder of a gym owner and realize that a mysterious pair of boxing gloves may be to blame. A nice synopsis there. I like it. So, as always, let's go ahead and bring in my co-host to talk a little bit about their general thoughts on the episode. So let's go ahead and bring in Miss Lacy Lou. Lacy, give me some general thoughts on Shadow Boxer.
So I watched this morning before work, and I have to say I had such a fun time with it. This was like a fun way to start my morning, honestly. Like some of these episodes, like I just don't get into as much as others, and like obviously I don't have as much to say as you can probably tell on some of them. But this one was a lot of fun. I thought it reminded me of like an episode for some reason of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer for some reason. I don't know why. I think it had to do with the supernatural element of the villain in this one. I really dug it, the shadow aspect. I thought it was genuinely creepy at times. This episode cracked me the fuck up. The funniest part is when I can't think of the main villain's name in this one right now, but Tommy. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, he was trying to when Manny got killed by the shadow, he was writing TO. Like I thought he was trying to write TKO. It's kind of funny. I thought it was hilarious when he was like, he said something along the lines of, he's like, yeah, your boyfriend can't save you now or something. And like Mickey's like, he's not my boy. And it's just like, obviously it's so funny that, you know, they're related, but it's still, they're making that association because they do have like such a weird relationship that everybody else obviously thinks like they have something going on. So I thought that was really funny. The way that I liked the cursed object in this one, the boxing gloves. I thought that Mickey and Ryan were a bit pretentious though, like just like a lot of the times when they like insert themselves into these situations, like it feels like authentic and like you're kind of rooting for them, but like the way they kind of went about it in this one, it just kind of felt like mean-spirited almost. I mean, the guy was a D-bag, but at the same time, like she was like literally leading this guy on. I liked the use of, you know, the light with the camera and the car, the headlights with the shadow. I don't really know why that makes the shadow. Well, I guess I do. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, but I liked this episode a lot. I thought it was fun. I thought the banter was hilarious. The villain, Tommy, he was great. You know, it's like Rocky gone bad. Like the main boxer, he just wanted like a take at him, and yeah, it just was fun. And I love how like Ryan had like no consequences for his actions. Like he was the one who like he like got the gloves, and he was the one who like brain damaged Tommy. Like I don't know, I just had fun with it. I thought it was a really interesting episode. I liked the shadow, and yeah, it was just fun for me.
Nice. All right, Mike, why don't you come on in here before I unload on everything I have to say about it. Now, I'm very curious to hear what Mike has to say about this, because Mike and I are both combat sports fans, and I have a lot to say about the boxing in this one. So let's see if Mike had the same gripes I did. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, the quality of the boxing going on, I'll put that aside. I'll give you that gift to talk about that. But overall, I like the story. You know, like you said, we're combat sports fans, so a pair of cursed boxing gloves sounds kind of cool and fun. I did kind of find it hilarious, and I'm assuming it's just because of budget. Obviously, the TV show, they're not going to be able to be holding these things in like huge arenas or something. Because when you start thinking of the logic behind it, and you're like, dude, if I had a pair of boxing gloves that like made it so where I could not lose, like I'm not fighting in this small little club. Like I'm gonna actually go make money and get big contracts beating people. But the show, it's like, no, we got to film in this little like boxing training center. It almost reminded me of like for those who've seen the first Rocky movie before he got his chance with Apollo Creed. Rocky was kind of like a club fighter, and he was about to retire because he wasn't really progressing in his career. So yeah, I like the story behind this. The added part with the animated shadow aspect, I almost feel that was a little unnecessary, but I guess it makes sense that a lot of these cursed items, in order for them to work, it's like they need that blood sacrifice. So I guess that's what they were trying to do with the shadow. Basically, like it's like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll give you the gift of being unbeatable, but in exchange, I need a sacrifice. And that's where the shadow came in. It was kind of goofy, but I guess if we're talking horror elements, it was actually probably constructive to put something in there, because a cursed pair of boxing gloves, yes, but when someone's boxing, they don't really, nothing about it, like as you're watching the actual fight, nothing becomes apparent that they're cursed, other than the fact that he would win. So I guess they added that element of the animated shadow, just to say, look, here's where the curse comes in. This shadow beats someone to death alongside of it. So yeah, I thought the story was cool. I liked that we got some fights, although the fights, yeah. And then the method in which they defeated, I guess, the shadow and got the gloves off, it felt kind of rushed, but I guess that's how it works with 42 minutes of story. It was like pretty neat and clean. Yeah. And then they actually got the curse item back, it seems like earlier than in other episodes. So like right away I was like, okay, there has to be something else here, because we're not ready for like that end of episode joke just yet from Jack. So we do get like a little segment where the guy comes back after the glove. So I thought that was kind of cool, because you don't always get that a lot. I think either in all of them or most of the episodes so far, once they initially get the item back, that's pretty much the end of the episode. So we did kind of get like a little bonus confrontation. So overall, yeah, I did enjoy the episode, and I'll leave it at that for now.
All right. So for me, overall, I enjoyed the episode. As I've already said, Mike and I are both combat sports fans. So anytime a horror anthology series can revolve around a combat sport, it's definitely going to pique our interest. Now, there are a lot of elements of this that I actually really, really enjoyed. I actually thought the performances in this episode were some of the best we've gotten this series. I thought Manny, played by Jack Duffy, I thought did a great job. Our villain, I thought did a great job. And even, once you realize the condition that he's kind of dealing with, it just adds even more logic to it. It makes total sense that Tommy would be, that would act like this. By the way, Tommy Dunn, what a great boxing name. I just obviously, there have been multiple Tommys, boxers
Tommy Gunn,
in the past,
real one.
Exactly, Tommy Gunn. So
actually, it was Tommy Morrison, but I think in Rocky V, his character was Tommy Gunn, if I remember correctly.
Which was years after this movie. So that, if anything, Rocky was ripping off this TV show. I'm sorry, I said movie. But yeah, I mean, Rocky V was like in the 90s, wasn't it? This episode aired in 87. So yeah, interesting. Back to it. I got to say it. I got to talk about the elephant in the room. This is some of the worst boxing I've ever seen set to film. And what's funny is that we're one episode removed from Dr. Jack, where I talked about how the fight choreography in that final confrontation was terrible. But the more I think about it, it's like if a doctor and a co-owner of a gift shop get into a fight, you're not going to really be expecting great combat. But in this episode, we've got boxers. We've got boxers that have been doing this for most of their lives, if not all of their lives. And it still looked awful. Like, there's literally one competent boxer in this whole episode, and it's the kid. And I wouldn't even go so far as to say the kid is like pro quality. He's just the best boxer in this episode. So yeah, the boxing is going to be a major downfall in this episode. Now, the cursed object, I love. I absolutely love the concept of cursed boxing gloves. My biggest issue, though, with the whole thing is the fact that no one knew that these gloves were cursed. If you guys remember last episode, I talked about the two major ways of cursing an item, either purposely cursing it through a ritual or incantation, or if a normal item is used in a terrible act. Well, obviously, you know, for the second episode in a row, it's B. These boxing gloves were used in a fight where their previous owner killed someone in the fight, and I can only assume it made him cursed from there. But another big issue I have is just the fact that Tommy wanted these gloves so badly. Like, when the episode starts, we meet Tommy. He's just this washed up gym rat who's, you know, sweeping the floor to try to make some ends meet. And somehow he just really, really wants these gloves, but with no justification. He never says why he wants these gloves. He's just convinced that if he has Killer Kelsey's gloves, that it's going to make him a better boxer, even though, as we find out later in the episode, his head is full of scar tissue because of all the, you know, beatings that he took early in his career. So it's like, I like the acting performances in here, but sometimes I question the motivation. Like, why did Tommy want these gloves so badly, not knowing what they did? You know, this is the second episode in a row now where it kind of seems like certain people who bought the item don't actually know what it did. Like last episode, the knife shop owner, you know, the ex-con, bought that scalpel from Curious Goods, not knowing what it did, and then just sold it in his knife shop. And then here we are again, where Manny, you know, the gym owner, it's stated in the episode that years earlier he actually bought some items from Curious Goods because he was, you know, trying to put together a boxing museum. So he bought these gloves. So he didn't know what those gloves did either. So it's a really weird thing to kind of wrap your head around. The other thing is too, is anybody else convinced that Tommy doesn't even know he killed anybody? Think about it. Tommy puts on the gloves and then he knows that he gets really strong and suddenly he can win. I don't think Tommy had any clue of what the Shadow was doing. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he understands that the Shadow is alive and doing stuff, but we never get, like, you know, we never get a confession. We never get any kind of, you know, I know what I was doing. Like, I'm like on the fence. I'm like 50-50 that Tommy doesn't even know what the hell he was doing, which kind of takes a little bit away from him because, like I said, I like him overall. He's a good antagonist, decent performance, but, you know, some of the plot holes, and again, there's going to be plot holes in every single episode of a series like this. You know, you only got 46 minutes to work with, so you got to stick in as much as you can. And I agree with Mike that the kind of the collection of the item itself was so glossed over because we still had an extra ending to have to get through still, which, by the way, I will make the statement here, this is my favorite ending of the series so far. I actually loved that you start to think that the episode is over. I wasn't looking at the time on the Blu-ray player, so I didn't realize that there was still 10 minutes left in the episode. But then when, you know, Tommy shows up at Curious Goods, I'm like, whoa, extra ending. And it worked for me the way it played out. You know, what Ryan had to do to Jack to kind of get out of the situation, like, that all works for me. And then the kicker, no fucking end of episode joke. Oh my God, I'm so goddamn happy. Even though last week's end of episode joke actually did make me chuckle, the fact that we don't get one this episode makes me so goddamn happy. It almost makes me want to make this my favorite episode of the series. It is not by any stretch. Sadly, there's still too many holes here and there. And as we go through the walkthrough, I'll talk about even more of the plot holes that just make zero sense in this episode. But overall, I agree with Lacy and Mike. I mean, I had a pretty good time with it. Yeah, there's logic issues throughout, plot holes throughout, but overall, a good cursed object. I like the Shadow. I like the Shadow effect. I know some people might look at it with 2025 eyes and think, oh, that looks terrible. But in 87, later on, after we get through the walkthrough and we start talking about facts on the episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about how they got that effect, how they did it back in 1987. It does not sound easy. So overall, yeah, I really like this episode. I have a really good time with it. I don't know that it's going to be one that I'll return to often, not nearly as often as, say, The Great Montero or Dr. Jack, but I still had a pretty good time with this one. I wish the boxing was a little bit better. I wish they would have brought in actual real boxers to, do some of these sparring scenes in the gym, because it was very obvious that this gym was filled with actors. And even our main actor who plays, Tommy Dunn in this episode, what was his name? David Ferry. He is not a fighter by any stretch. He is a professional actor who took boxing training for this role. And I'll actually have a story about that too when we talk about some more facts on the episode. So yeah, like I said, overall, I enjoy it. Not one of the better episodes out there, but 8 episodes into the series, this is easily my favorite ending. You get that extra little ending, that extra little sense of suspense, that extra bit of danger. Especially having an antagonist inside of Curious Goods. That's not something that we've really had. I think we might have had that once in the series so far, not counting, Uncle Lewis, of course. But I mean, to actually have one of these, people in the shop and kind of actually understanding what it is that they do there, why they want those gloves, it just added that extra element of just awesomeness to it for me. I guess that's it for general thoughts for me. I'll turn it back over to my co-host to see if anybody has anything they want to add before we get into what should be a fairly quick walkthrough. It's not a very complicated story. It's a boxing story, so it's going to be quick.
I was just going to say, with that, the ending, the fact that we kind of get that final confrontation, it does make sense, because if the person that they get the item back from, if they're not killed in the process or taken to jail, then it is logical that they might try to track it back down and get it back, especially if it's attached to them having some type of success or monetary gain from having the item. So I couldn't say, based on lack of memory of the entire series, if that happens multiple times during the series, but it is something to kind of keep an eye on.
The only other thing I had to add was I thought it was completely hilarious to where Tommy had stashed the gloves in his apartment. It was just a little hole in the wall. And I love how ballsy Ryan was trying to get those gloves off of him. He knew. But yeah, I just really like this one. I thought it was hilarious. I thought the acting was funny. I kind of felt sorry for Tommy for some reason. I don't know. They were just so mean to him from the jump. Obviously, we don't know, the backstory, but there was just something that I felt sorry for, and it just felt this guy, not even given a shot. I don't know. That's where I guess it feels really fast. I felt sympathetic towards this villain for some reason, which is not usually the case here, but for some reason I did. I don't know.
Yeah, and on the point of Tommy not even possibly realizing that there was any type of supernatural curse that was aiding him, it kind of tracks for an episode like this, because when it comes to sports, sometimes fighters or football, any sport, there can be an element of superstition where hey, I started winning fights with these gloves, so I do not want to give them up. I'm going to fight every fight with these gloves until exactly. I lose again. So for all he knew, it was just almost a good luck thing. So that's why he was so adamant about wanting them back.
Well, it's kind of the Peter Pan effect, right? With Peter Pan and his shadow. So I feel he would know, because Peter Pan obviously knows his shadow is
Well, yeah, he, like I said, he knew the shadow. Obviously, he saw the shadow the very first time he puts the gloves on, but he never acknowledges what the shadow is doing. How would he know what the shadow is doing? He doesn't. It's not like he shares sight with the shadow. Yes, if the shadow is blinded by light, Tommy is then blinded by light. But it's not like Tommy sees what the shadow sees.
The shadow feels the more villainous Tommy becomes throughout the episode.
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel it gives the power of it. So I feel he has to know to some extent, if not fully. I don't know. That's just
possibly. Yeah, we'll see. All right then, folks. So let's go ahead and get into our walkthrough. Like I said, I'll try to make this as quick as possible as it is a fairly simple story. Our episode opens up with Tommy Dunn. Tommy Dunn is a boxer. Well, kind of more of a wannabe boxer. He has a temper. It's mentioned in passing that he served time for assault, so he does have a record. And with his record for assault, that makes him a risk in the ring, which is probably why some people don't want to give him a shot. Like convicted felons, it's kind of hard, especially if they're in for assault, kind of hard to give them a boxing license. So I do kind of understand that mentality a little bit. Now, Manny is the owner of Manny's Gym. He takes pity on Tommy, and he kind of lets him hang around the gym, sweep up, do odd jobs, things like that, just to kind of, give Tommy, because Tommy obviously wants to be a boxer, but Manny knows that Tommy doesn't have the skills to do it. But he's kind of throwing him a bone by letting him stay inside the gym, to work and associate with the other boxers, things like that. Now, Dunn thinks that his key to winning in the ring and beating the gym superstar Kid Cornelius, we do meet Kid Cornelius, he's kind of like the big young fighter in the gym. He's supposedly has a great future ahead of him. Manny is investing a lot into him, things like that. So obviously that garners jealousy from Tommy. So, like I said, the only way that Tommy thinks he'll be able to beat this kid is by getting a pair of gloves, antique boxing gloves, that are in Manny's personal collection. Now, when he tries them on, he kind of feels like it ignites a fire within him. And obviously, he doesn't quite understand what's happening, but he understands that when he wears them, he feels powerful. Now, the gloves once belonged to Killer Ken Kelsey. He was a welterweight champ in the 1940s. In 1947, he unintentionally killed one of his opponents in the ring. After that, Jack says that, Ken went a little crazy, that he hung up the gloves and never threw another punch again. So, again, an object used in a terrible act becoming cursed. So, when Dunn attempts to sneak into Manny's office to steal the gloves, he feels his hands shake. Like, he puts the gloves on and he feels his hands shake. And the gloves almost seem to lead him to the wall in the back of the room that he's in. And when he looks over, he notices his shadow come to life. The shadow boxes its way out of the locker room all by itself. Basically, after that, Tommy goes to spar in the gym with his new set of gloves. And while he's sparring on the punching bag, we see his shadow out in the street, emulating the exact same moves that Tommy's making. The only thing I could figure is that the shadow goes after whoever upset the owner most recently, because obviously Manny telling Tommy that he was washed up and that he was never going to have a career upset Tommy. And then the shadow goes after Manny. So
the shadow is like our doubles in us. It mimics your movements.
I like that. I like it a lot. That's cool. So when the shadow finds Manny, it matches Tommy's punches that he's doing inside the gym, which beats Manny to a pulp. Unfortunately, Manny does fall dead to his injuries. Basically, his face is all bloody. Pretty bloody episode, by the way. Pretty impressive amount of blood in this one. Now, with his dying breath, Manny tries to write Tommy's name on a piece of cardboard on the ground in his own blood. Unfortunately, he was only able to get out the letters T and O and then fell dead. So, it doesn't quite give investigators exactly what they need. But eventually, Ryan and Mickey are able to figure out that the TO representative of Tommy. Now, in the wake of Manny's death, his widow calls Curious Goods to see if they're interested in buying any of Manny's collectibles. The reason that she's calling Curious Goods is that because some of the items that he owns were purchased from Curious Goods. So Jack takes a look at the manifest to see if potentially Uncle Lewis, sold Manny any cursed items. And as it turns out, yeah, he sold him a pair of gloves. And that's when we get the backstory on the gloves. And of course, Jack was at that fight when Killer Ken Kelsey killed his final opponent. Man, what a life Jack has led. Like, he knows so much and he's done so much in his life. It's crazy. Yet here he is owning a cursed gift store. Go figure. At this point, Jack can't find the boxing gloves amongst Manny's belongings. But they're hard to miss because they actually have the word killer stamped across the wristbands of the gloves. Mickey, being being a pretty girl, has no problem wandering among the boxers on the floor. And of course, Mickey looking the way she does, none of the boxers have any problems of her snapping pictures. And obviously what she's doing is she's trying to take close-up pictures of all the boxers' gloves to see if she could find that killer embossment. By the way, did you guys notice how multiple times in this episode Roby's accent came out? Like, did anybody notice that? I noticed it at least 3 times, and it started to bother me.
I'd have to go back and like really pay attention to that.
I mean, it slapped me in the face the first time I heard the accent. I'm like, what the fuck? That's not an American girl. What the hell was that? For those who don't know, Louise Roby is French Canadian, so her first language is French. So I'm telling you, there's at least 3 instances in this episode where if you listen very carefully, her French Canadian accent comes out, and like I said, it took me out of it. Like it's little things like that that'll take me out of a movie or a TV show. You know, when the actor's real accent kind of comes out real quick. Like I said, you kind of have to be paying attention, but it bothered me, so whatever. While she's taking pictures of the boxers, Tommy Dunn walks up to her. He kind of swaggers real, douchey, basically starts hitting on her, talking about how great he is and how, you don't want to talk to any of the losers in this gym. You want to talk to me. Eventually, Kid Cornelius walks up and basically shoves Tommy away, basically says, why are you even talking to this girl? He basically tells Mickey, that guy's washed up. He hasn't won a fight in years. He'll never be anything. You shouldn't even bother talking to that guy. And this is where we find out Kid Cornelius's real name is Sam. So we now know him as Sam. Outside of the gym, Dunn spots Tony the Terrible. That's a boxer that Mickey had been flirting with in the gym when Dunn came over to interrupt. Dunn wants to fight Tony, but what he really means is he wants his shadow to fight Tony. Tony pays him no mind and basically goes back to the gym to prepare for his next fight in the ring. What's going on here is that Tommy Dunn has taken a fight, like a low-level fight in like a local gym, and this is when he sees Tony the Terrible outside and they have this confrontation. Tommy goes into the ring, but before he goes into the ring, he does the touch gloves thing again with the shadow. The shadow then goes and runs off on its own. Eventually, we see the shadow emulating Tommy's moves. While Tommy is in the ring beating the hell out of his opponent, the shadow is outside beating the hell out of Tony the Terrible. Eventually, after the fight, the club clears out. Ryan rushes into the locker room to inspect Tommy's locker, of course, looking to... Oh, by the way, did you notice how after Tommy's shadow killed Tony the Terrible, he took the nickname? His nickname is now Tommy the Terrible. But did you also notice that he misspelled terrible on the locker?
Oh, God.
I love that.
No.
This guy has so much scar tissue in his fucking brain. He can't even spell terrible. So good. I love it. Anyway, while Ryan's looking through the locker, he doesn't find the gloves, but he does find a medical report citing that Dunn is unfit to box. We don't find that information out until a little bit later, but I'll go ahead and reveal it now. It turns out that Tommy has brain damage. He basically has a load of scar tissue around his brain from just, the years of getting battered to the head, with those 16-ounce gloves that boxers use. Mickey, Ryan, and Jack sit vigil outside of Dunn's apartment. They've been there for hours waiting to him to leave so that they can go in and look for the gloves because they weren't at the gym where Ryan looked. Mickey ends up having an idea. She ends up calling Dunn and basically propositioning him for like a date, basically saying, we didn't really get a lot of time to talk at the gym that day. Would you want to meet for a cup of coffee? They end up meeting at a diner right next to Tommy's apartment. Mickey is there just to kill time so that Jack and Ryan can, sift through Tommy's apartment looking for those gloves. Unfortunately, Tommy starts to get impatient with Mickey. Tommy, I can't get over the boxers in this movie act like guys from the 50s, the way that hey, you're a good looking skirt. I don't remember people using those kind of terms in the 80s. I was there, I assure you. But these guys are acting like guys from the 50s and 60s, the way that they're talking down to Mickey. But again, they are boxers, so they take a lot of hits to the head. The brain damage affects you after a while. Tommy starts getting kind of frustrated with Mickey because he keeps propositioning her, saying, let's go back to my apartment. Let's go back to my apartment. Mickey obviously has no intention of going back to his apartment. She's trying to keep him out of his apartment. She finally decides that, no, I'm not going to go to your apartment today. I'm not that kind of girl. Maybe next time. But Tommy gets frustrated, walks out of the bar, pissed off, goes back to his apartment, and actually finds Jack and Ryan in mid-search in his apartment. He ends up kicking Jack out of the apartment and closing the front door so that it's just him and Ryan. So Tommy attacks Ryan in his apartment. At the same time, we see the shadow boxer appear. Now, this is the first time that we see the shadow boxer appear without Tommy doing the touch gloves thing against the wall. So is that a necessity? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. The first 2 times he had to do it, but the rest of the episode, he never has to do it again. So while Tommy is fighting or attempting to fight Ryan, I'll give Ryan all the credit in the world. He's very evasive. Like, he doesn't just sit there and take a punch like some of the people in the boxing matches that we see this episode. Like, Ryan actually shucks and dives and, he moves and avoids punches. In the process of him avoiding Tommy's punches, Tommy's shadow, or should I say Killer Kelsey's shadow, because that's something that we haven't actually talked about yet. That's something that we'll talk about here at the end of the episode. It's kind of one of those, because a lot of people will assume that that's Tommy's shadow. It's actually not. It's Killer Kelsey's shadow. But we'll talk, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. While he's attacking Ryan, the shadow is outside attacking Mickey. Don't forget, Mickey was the last person to upset Tommy. So I guess the shadow's, target is now Mickey. While Tommy is attacking Ryan in the apartment, the shadow is trying to attack Mickey. Mickey ends up snapping a picture with the camera that she had earlier at the gym. Oh, by the way, did you notice that she mentions her fiance in this episode? First time since episode 1, she actually reconfirms that she is still engaged. During the gym scene, she talks about how she's putting together like a picture, I forget what she calls it, a history, like a pictorial about a day in the life in Curious Goods, and that she's going to send it to her fiance. So yeah, Mickey is still officially engaged as of episode 8. Go figure. Because Mickey still has that camera with her from earlier in the day, she ends up snapping a shot of the shadow, which actually blinds the shadow very briefly. And then at the same time, Tommy is blinded as well. So in the apartment, Tommy is now blinded. Ryan attacks, trying to get the gloves away from him. How Ryan wasn't able to get these gloves off him is beyond me, because it's not like they were tied on. Tommy literally walked into his apartment, went to the little cubby hole in his wall, grabbed them, and just threw them on. Anybody who's ever worn boxing gloves know they fall off really easy if you don't tie them down. So, again, whatever, suspension of disbelief. Eventually, Mickey snaps her camera again, a third time. She snaps it a second time, and the flash doesn't go off. But then finally the flash does recharge. This is an old camera, mind you, folks, with a film camera with like a separate flash attachment. And that attachment, you can't just run it over and over and over again. You got to let it recharge after each use. So she takes a third snapshot, which again blinds the shadow. And at the same time, it blinds Tommy once again. This time, instead of trying to get the gloves off of Tommy, Ryan just decides to make his escape. He just runs out of the apartment and leaves. That night, Mickey wants to develop that film because she's the only one who saw the shadow. Jack, I don't even know where Jack was at this point. He was probably still in the apartment building, like in the hallway. And, of course, Ryan is fighting with Tommy. So Mickey is the only one who saw the shadow. She's trying to convince Ryan and Jack that it's true. I think this is part of what Lacy was talking about earlier with the cynicism between the cousins. Like, when Mickey says that she saw the shadow, Ryan doesn't believe her. It's like, motherfucker, do you not know what kind of shop you're running? Why would you not believe your cousin when she tells you a shadow attacked her? Like, that doesn't make in this world, it doesn't make any fucking sense. But again, I guess I have to accept it that Ryan and Mickey are just going to be shitty to each other through the entirety of this series. After this whole situation, they get the film developed. And here's another douchey thing that happens. Mickey wants that film developed right then and there, but it's nighttime. Everything is closed. Ryan ends up finding someone who could develop the pictures for him. And he makes the comment that I had to give him my Green Lantern #3 to get him to develop these pictures. And Mickey just blows it off like, whatever. My friends, a copy of Green Lantern #3 is worth $33,680 fucking dollars. Now, granted, it probably wasn't worth that much in 1987, but it's. I went back and checked like some of the trends of that comic book because I'm stupid. And in 1987, that comic book was still worth $600. So Ryan gave up a $600 comic to get these pictures developed, and Mickey doesn't even fucking say thank you. She just blows him off like he's a child. And that really, as a collector myself, that pissed me off. So yeah. Lacy's right. These two are just contentious throughout this episode. After they develop the film, the two pictures that had the Flash working do not show the shadow boxer, which of course makes sense because the light source is right in front of them, so it wouldn't create a shadow. Then again, the logic of this shadow creature, you kind of have to throw it out the window anyway. Some of the shots that we get of the shadow, it's like, where's the light source? Like, where, it's kind of weird. So, just don't think about it too much. So like I said, they're looking at the pictures, and then the one picture that went off where the Flash wasn't recharged yet, that picture shows the shadow. And then finally, Jack and Ryan kind of have to eat their words because they've got photographic proof that Mickey wasn't, fucking around, or that she wasn't being a stupid girl or whatever. So yeah, it just bothers me that as of 8 episodes into this series, these 3 people don't trust each other implicitly. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, I don't know, whatever. So Mickey, Ryan, and Jack are there talking about how they know that Tommy is responsible for Manny's death, but that they can't prove it. They are overheard by Sam, Kid Cornelius. He overhears the conversation. He instantly walks over to Tommy, who, by the way, this entire episode, Tommy has been challenging Kid Cornelius. Sam basically just laughs at him. He's like, no, I'm not going to waste my time fighting you. You're a chump. But then after Sam hears that Manny's death is due to Tommy, he runs right up to Tommy, challenges him to a fight, and then basically fast forward to that night. They are fighting in the ring. And right before the fight, Jack walks up to Tommy in the locker room. And at first, I didn't know what Jack was doing. But then about a couple of minutes in, I realized Jack is purposely trying to antagonize Tommy so that he will be the next victim. He wants to be the next victim so that, they can spring their trap or whatever plan it is that they have. So he basically walks up to Tommy, tells him, I know about the gloves, and I know what you're doing with those gloves, and I know what happened to Manny and Tony. Obviously, Tommy just kind of plays dumb at first, but then eventually Jack says, I have a proposition for you. I won't go to the police with what you've been doing if you make me your manager and give me 70% of your purse. Now, obviously, you ask a boxer for 70% of their purse, they're going to say no instantly. But in this situation, it pissed off Tommy enough to say, you know what, fuck that. I'm going to send my shadow after you. So he agrees to the deal, tells Jack to wait for him out in the parking lot. Jack then goes out to the parking lot to wait for Tommy. Tommy goes out to the ring to fight Kid Cornelius. But of course, Mickey and Jack have a plan. As soon as the shadow appears and starts to approach Jack, Mickey is there with a floodlight, one of those big handheld floodlights, and she shines it right on the shadow. And it blinds him, which of course blinds Tommy in the ring, who's fighting with Kid Cornelius. So, it makes him look terrible. People are booing because of the quality of the boxing. Eventually, the floodlight stops working. And instantly, I'm thinking to myself, you only brought one fucking light? This was your plan? You brought one damn lamp with you. You didn't bring backups, you freaking idiots. After the lamp fails, we see the shadow start to approach Mickey and Jack. Eventually, it takes a swing at Mickey, knocking the broken floodlight out of her hand. And then it turns its attention to Jack. And like I said, as long as the light isn't shining on the Shadow, Tommy is in the ring doing well. Like, he's beating up on Kid Cornelius, but then as soon as the Shadow is blinded, roles are reversed. Kid Cornelius starts beating up on Tommy. Eventually, like I said, the Shadow starts to approach Jack. It looks like it's about to go for a kill blow, like, a big wind up. But then suddenly Mickey shows up with the car and turns on the high beams towards the Shadow. The high beams completely blind the Shadow, which of course at the same time completely blinds Tommy in the ring. Tommy ends up getting knocked out by Kid Cornelius. I gotta say, man, I was pretty impressed with Ryan. As soon as Tommy Dunn is knocked out in the ring, Ryan does this fucking leap flip into the ring. I mean, it's the kind of shit you'd see professional wrestlers do when they run into the ring and do a flip as they go through the ropes. Like, that was fucking impressive. I don't care. Ryan doesn't look that athletic, and it was actually him. It wasn't a stunt double. He actually did that move. So, kudos to him. Anyway, he flips his way into the ring, grabs the gloves, and sneaks out. So at this point, the cursed item has been returned to Curious Goods. It is now in the vault. We start to feel like, okay, the episode is over. Now, like I said, I wasn't looking at the duration on the episode, so I didn't realize there was still 10 minutes left in the episode. We end up getting Mickey getting upset with Ryan because Mickey is upset about the fact that 2 people had to die before they were able to get these gloves back, which I think that's the case every week, though, isn't it? Multiple people die before they get the cursed object back. But for some reason, Mickey got upset about it this episode, like really upset. Like, she actually yelled at Ryan and Jack and like ran off to her room and went to bed. That evening, she's in bed. Ryan walks up to the door, her bedroom door, knocks, asks if everything is okay. She says, yes, I'm fine. I just want to be alone for a little while. I'll see you in the morning. As soon as Ryan walks away from her bedroom door, in pops Tommy Dunn. Yes, Tommy is back, and he is in Curious Goods. He's not only in Curious Goods, he's in Mickey's bedroom, holding a knife up to her throat. And he basically tells her, get my gloves or I kill you right now. Of course, Mickey, being timid, basically agrees. Ryan ends up walking into the bedroom at that exact moment because he hears a minor commotion. He sees Tommy sitting there with a knife up to Mickey's throat. He knows instantly why he's there. So, Ryan is like, no, don't hurt her. I'll go get the gloves. Just stay right here. At that moment, Jack appears too. So now all 3 of them are there. Tommy sees all 3 of them. Tommy now realizes that they're all working together. Like I said, Tommy's met all 3 of these people separately throughout the episode. Well, obviously, Jack and Ryan tried to break into his apartment, and then he met Mickey at the gym. So now he realizes that this is some kind of conspiracy to get those gloves away from him. Eventually, Jack laments and says, fine, don't hurt her. I'll do anything you want. He tells Ryan to go get the gloves. While Ryan is going to get the gloves, they still have their little Mexican standoff there with the knife where, Tommy's got the knife up to Roby's neck. Jack is standing there. Eventually, Tommy tells Jack to turn around. And we see Tommy take the knife that he has in his hand and put it in the stabbing position, where he's going to stab down on Jack's back. But then Roby stops him, basically telling him, hey, wait a minute. Nobody can prove what you've done up to this point, because everything that's happened thus far is supernatural. The police will never believe us. No one's going to believe a story about a shadow killing people. So you literally are an innocent man right now. If you kill us here in our house, you're no longer innocent. They now have murders that they can prove that you did. While they're saying that distracts Tommy long enough that eventually we see the Shadow. The Shadow walks into Mickey's bedroom and punches Tommy in the face. Then we see Ryan hold it with one of the gloves he's actually wearing. He hands Tommy one of the gloves, but then he puts on the other one and he starts beating the shit out of Jack. I'm not exaggerating, folks. He literally punches Jack in the stomach, which of course then makes the Shadow boxer punch Tommy in the stomach. We actually hear Ryan start to say, get up, old man, get up, old man. Like, at first I thought it was an act. But then as it turns out, as soon as Mickey is able to get the glove away from Ryan, he kind of snaps out of it. So it kind of gives us a little bit of an example of the power of these gloves. Not only do they grant you strength, they also kind of maybe possess you a little bit even. Because like I said, Ryan wasn't acting like Ryan while he was holding that glove and beating the shit out of Jack. Eventually, yes, they beat him up, and, Tommy is now passed out on the bed. They're able to call the police, get him arrested. Now, finally, we get our real ending, and we see that Jack now has a giant fucking black eye. And they don't actually make a joke so much as Jack kind of makes a lighthearted threat where he says to Ryan, when you least expect it, I swear to God. And then the episode just ends right there. So, I mean, still kind of a joke, I guess, but not a full-on dad joke, like we usually get. So, yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. So, I don't know. What do you guys got? Anything else you want to add now that we're done with the walkthrough before I get into facts?
I did find Jack Shiner kind of funny. Well done with the makeup on that black eye.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, second episode in a row where Ryan either uses the cursed object or allows a villain to use the cursed object, and Jack doesn't really say much of anything. So kind of interesting, because like I said, later in the series, Jack will admonish Mickey and Ryan both for using cursed objects, but 2 episodes in a row now, Jack's just kind of like, okay, whatever. I mean, in both instances, it saved Jack's life, last episode with the surgery, and then this episode with Tommy holding the knife. So I guess to an extent, Jack is okay with using cursed objects if it saves his life, which is kind of interesting. Go figure. All right, so not a whole lot of facts on this episode, though I will say that from the beginning, the writer of this episode, Josh Miller, wanted to do something with boxing. He was a big boxing fan, and he wanted to incorporate boxing to the Curious Goods lexicon, if you will. But if you guys remember what Mike actually said earlier in this episode, it's kind of boring to just say, oh, these gloves make you powerful, and that's it. That's kind of dull. It doesn't really make for great storytelling. So basically, the writer sequestered himself for like a couple of days just trying to figure out how they can incorporate cursed gloves into an episode of Friday the 13th. During his time of being locked in his apartment, he started thinking about shadow boxing, and he started riffing on shadow boxing about how stupid people sometimes look when they're shadow boxing. But then it started to kind of develop in his head of, oh, what if the shadow becomes sentient and goes on and does whatever the hell it wants or whatever? And that's kind of like the building blocks of this episode where it came from. Once he riffed on the term shadow box and he kind of came up with that idea, he wrote the episode in 2 days. So literally once he came up with the idea, he wrote the episode in 2 days. Now, I wanted to talk about the effect, the shadow effect in this one, because it's done very interestingly. Here's a quote from the writer of the series. I found the effects of the shadow boxer himself to feel completely natural. It didn't feel dated at all. And this is one of the most digitally heavy episodes of Friday the 13th, the series, we've ever done. The director of the episode, Timothy Bond, explains how they achieved the look of this effect. I'm very proud of this episode. It was all done semi-live. The shadow was played by, in some scenes, was played by the boxer David Ferry. But if you look at IMDb, there is a credit for the boxer by an actor, David Bortolucci. I think the mentality was that they didn't want the shadow to be Tommy's shadow. They wanted it to be Killer Ken Kelsey's shadow, since he was the first owner of those gloves. He was the one who ended up getting those things cursed by killing someone in the ring with them. The shadow being played by the actor emulating David Ferry. I started by filming the scene with a live actor. Then we went on a stage and dressed him in all black, put him on a white background, so there was a really good contrast for the computer to separate the outlines. We had a monitor on the set and would take the feed from the camera and superimpose it over the footage. So they're literally using two cameras. They're using one camera to record the shadow on a white background, and then they superimpose that over the actual footage that they filmed on the episode. But they're doing it live. So if you notice, the movements of the shadow do match. Like when people get punched by the shadow, it actually looks like it's kind of in sync, which is, a minor miracle for 1987. That's because they were shooting them at the exact same time. So there was no splicing involved. One of the big secrets of doing these things was that it has to look like it was shot by the same camera with the same lens at the same distance with the same level of inclination, all of that sort of stuff. We had meticulous notes about all that. It took a lot of meticulous plotting to get us to the point where we could film. Then we just went crazy with the shadow. Apparently they shot a lot of extra scenes with the shadow just to give the editors options for what they can use. So literally a bunch of unused shadow boxer footage was left on the cutting room floor. They could superimpose the original shot, so I could say you have to walk around the garbage can there or something like that, basically giving the actors on the main camera and the shadow their direction at the same time. The writer kind of finishes with, when I saw the episode, I was blown away at what they achieved with the shadow effect. Actually didn't have anything to do with the creation of the effect. Like I said, this is the writer of the episode. Like I said, when he saw it on screen, he was kind of blown away. It was exactly how I had imagined it would look, and that was a great thrill. So yeah. And then the last little bit of facts I have about this one, I mentioned it earlier that David Ferry, the actor who played Tommy Dunn in this episode, is an actor. He was not an actual boxer. Well, he actually had a boxer on set with him, working with him, training with him, giving him pointers. Unfortunately, no one remembers who that boxer was. I'm not kidding. The director, the writer, the actor, David Ferry, no one has any recollection of the name of that boxer, but he was an actual boxer in Canada, a local Toronto native boxer who came on set as like an advisor. David actually gives a couple of one particular funny story. The boxer that they brought in had been a professional boxer for over 20 years. He was so ingrained in what he was supposed to do as a boxer that sometimes he would accidentally hit David while they were training. One example that David gave was, at one point while we were just kind of sparring, I very lightly tapped him on the ribs, a very light body shot. Apparently, his boxer brain turned on, and the boxer retaliated with an overhand right, knocking David Ferry out. As soon as David Ferry wakes up, the boxer is there telling him, I'm so sorry. That was instinctive. I did not mean to do that. They ended up having a good laugh about it later on. Luckily, there was no facial damage to the actor, so they were able to continue filming. But yeah, that's a funny story that he relates about getting knocked out by this boxer who no one can remember. No one can remember this poor guy's name. So as much as I'd love to give this guy credit, unfortunately, we can't give him any credit because no one remembers his damn name. But that is everything I have for Friday the 13th, episode number 8, The Shadow Boxer. I will turn it over one more time to my co-host to see if they have any closing thoughts before we close up the shop. So yeah, Lacy, Mike, anything else to add before we get out of here?
No, I think you summed it up really well there. I just had a really good time with it. It was, I could think of worse ways to start my morning. And I don't know, it just put me in a good mood. I'll remember this episode for sure. I just thought it was hilarious that while Mickey's trying to distract him for all of 5 minutes, they can't literally see the hole in the wall with the boxing gloves, and then Tommy comes right away. I need these. Yeah. I just think it's a really fun episode, and it's one that I would recommend. It's light compared to some of the other ones. I just thought it was a good time.
Awesome. Mike, you got anything?
Not really. Just I appreciated the episode just for my own kind of enjoyment, liking boxing and combat sports overall. Despite the boxing itself being kind of weak, It was interesting because, especially in these types of sports, combat sports, everyone's always looking for an edge. So a magical pair of boxing gloves that lets you beat the shit out of your opponent was an interesting concept indeed.
Absolutely, definitely. All right, shoppers, this is going to be your final warning. We will be closing up in 10 minutes. Please bring your final purchases to the front. While we do that, let's go ahead and find out where everyone can hear my co-host. So let's start with Miss Lacy Lou. Lacy, tell the folks where they can hear you.
Obviously, as always, the Cut to the Chase feed, wherever podcasts are found. I just released a commentary that Dan and I did on Wes Craven's Cursed. The film just had its 20th anniversary, so I was supposed to do an article for Pop Horror for it, so I was like, I need to watch this again. I actually really like the movie. We bring in a lot of facts and fun stuff throughout, make fun of it. It's a good time. I also just did, I hadn't done one in a while, a commentary on my own of a film. So I did 1998, The Devil in the Flesh with Rose McGowan. It had been years since I had seen it, and it was a little boring, but there's still some fun to be had with it. And then Slumber Party Massacre, we did a commentary on My Bloody Valentine that we released last month, and then we're going to be recording, come Saturday, 1970s blind spot movies. So films that we all picked a film that we hadn't seen from the 1970s. I'll give you a little spoiler alert. The film that I chose was Burnt Offerings. So you'll be able to hear my thoughts on that. It hasn't been recorded yet, but it'll be out later this month.
Nice. Very nice. Mike, what do you got for me?
We got... I don't know. What do we have? We skipped Fresh Cuts this week. Otherwise, there would be a Fresh Cuts. But probably... by the time this episode is up, we'll have that John Lithgow one. What the hell's the name of it? I keep forgetting. It's like a
Julie
weird
Penn?
Name.
Something like that?
Yeah. Something Julie Penn.
Yeah.
So that'll be up, and looks like we will be recording an episode of the main show Sunday. So that'll be probably up as well, or at least close to being released in that. And I think that's it for me. No guest spots recently, so
the only other thing I'll bring up is No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. Episode 35 is now available. That's the first episode that starts a 2-month journey between Creature Comforts and the main show, No More Room in Hell, where we're going to be looking at some OG creature features on Creature Comforts, and then the remakes of those same movies on the next episode of No More Room in Hell. So, episode 35 covers Cat People from 1942, which, of course, we'll be talking about the 1982 remake with Nastasia Kinski on the next episode of the main show. The next episode of Creature Comforts, which will be the March episode, we'll be taking a look at 1958's The Fly, which of course means we will be talking about Brundlefly on that same episode of the main show, No More Room in Hell, when we talk about the remake with Jeff Goldblum. So look out for that. But other than the stuff Mike's already discussed, that's pretty much it for me. So on behalf of Mike and Lacy Lou, this is Mr. Venom saying thank you, shoppers, for stopping by. The Crystal Lake gift shop is now closed. Let's say goodbye to the folks.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Take care, everybody.